Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be taking Sorrento off property for a trail ride. So this is his third time hauling off property. Last year we were able to do a closer ride that was about half an hour from where I board, and we rode for about 2 hours there, and then I was also able to take him to Otter Creek Trails, which is a really beautiful place up here in upstate New York. And that's about 2 hours away, and we did quite a few hours there, I think around 4 or 5. And he was really good for both of those trips. I'm really excited to take him today. We're just going to stay close. But trailering has kind of been something that he's still unsure about. Definitely brings back memories of rodeos, I think. So the question I get asked the most about Sorrento is how I was able to end up riding him. I'm going to try to summarize what I did with him as you watch our trail ride. Um, and this is what I did with Sorrento to take him from a somewhat wild bucking Bronco to a solid riding horse.
He's so wimpy about it. He's like, hey, you gotta get a little more vigor. Yeah, I know.
So the backstory with Sorrento is that he was purchased by a girl from a horse trader, and he was sold as a family horse. She was looking for a horse to event with, and when she picked him up, he was unhandled. She said that he knew how to tie and how to run into a trailer, but not much else. And when he shed his coat, she did some research on his brands and discovered that he was an ex-bucking horse. She started from square one with groundwork and worked on tacking. She even did a few times of sitting on him, and then like a handful of easy little rides with him moving a little. And then one day he exploded bucking, and she really couldn't take that risk with her young kids that she has.
No, you can't smash into justice, though.
He ended up sitting for a bit. She struggled to find a trainer that would be willing to take him. Ended up sending him to an Amish trainer that took him for 2 months. And she told me that the first month he could barely handle him and get near him. The second month he was still bucking.
Alright, you can't bump her whole.
She ended up taking him home and listed him for sale. She was very honest in her ad, which I really appreciated, so I definitely knew what I was getting. And if anything, she was probably a little bit too negative and too real because he
You're a seahorse.
really just tried so hard, so he was
Like water.
able to come a lot further than she kind of made it out to sound. But I did purchase him knowing that he may never be ridden, and I was willing to take that chance. When he arrived to me, he was around 75% tame, I would say. He was very watchful, and the first 2 weeks, every day he would end up jumping at least 8 feet across the ground at a little noise or if something flapped or moved. Just the most random little things that most horses would never even notice. He was also very worried about having his feet handled. I have a whole video on that and his progress with that.
It's like, now I gotta go home. He's very.
She was able to have him trimmed just a few times because he needed to be sedated for it. So when he arrived, he had pretty overgrown feet and extremely long heels, and we're still working on getting his feet kind of to grow out connected and to really be a good solid foot. So initially, I worked on setting a routine and never sneaking around him. I think it's really easy to tiptoe around horses like this. But then eventually that makes it more difficult in the long run when you have to get them used to people that act normal.
Yeah. This is
I
an
would halter him, bring him to the cross ties, I would groom him in the same order, and essentially I had to let him investigate every brush and tool for a very long time. He would just look very skeptically at them. I'd let him smell them until he seemed to be okay with them. For his feet, I did use reward-based training in that he got alfalfa pellets, which he loves, when I cleaned his feet, even if he wasn't the best at holding them up for me or struggled. If he wanted to pull away his foot, I absolutely let him. I know this is a controversial topic, but I wanted to make him feel safe and not like I was going to hold his foot back when he felt he needed it. So fast forward to today, I can trim him at liberty and he stands perfectly and doesn't have any issues constantly pulling his feet away or anything like that. In fact, he holds them up for me nicely and I can just hold them in an open hand.
There you go. Good job.
In the beginning, after grooming, we would either do a hand walk on the little trails I have where I board or on the road because I ride primarily on the road.
Going over the large
He was not very confident with leading just in general, so that really helped him, and it also really built his confidence in the world, especially walking in hand on the road past houses and cars and all of the things that he hadn't seen much of.
You can put her in front if you want.
After a few weeks, I added in some basic groundwork
He's
practice
unbothered.
and TRT work, like jumping up and down next to him and helping him find relaxation and feel the different parts of his body. I felt like this was really important for him because he did arrive really body sore and just kind of disconnected from his body at times.
I bet.
For grooming, I brought in a small step stool and I would stand on it so I could groom both sides of him and he could see me out of both eyes since I was somewhat over his back. His ears would often be locked back on me, but after a while he did relax and understood he didn't need to be worried and that I wasn't asking him to do anything. From what I could find, he was a saddle bronc until he was around 6 years old, so I wanted to introduce riding in a way that was different. I really wanted him to think about it as a different ask and a different activity than what his previous experience was. So I introduced a new game which started as a pile of straight alfalfa hay. And we would do our regular grooming routine, and then I would take him to the hay pile with just a halter and lead, and he'd eat while I leaned on him and stood over him on my step stool. After a week or so, I did ask him about tack. I made sure he was able to walk away and was not distracted when I presented each item. He had quite a few questions about the saddle pad and needed to investigate that for quite a bit. He would flinch his skin if it was too much, as well as his ears locked on, and his eye was also very telling when he was getting nervous and unsure. So I really just took my time with him and let him answer whatever questions he had and just really investigate things. He was very receptive to being tacked at his own pace. I ride English generally, so he would wear a pad and his dressage saddle with the girth on loosely, and then I'd bring out some hay for him to wander a few steps, and he got to stand and eat that. He definitely thought it was a really great game. The next step I made was to add multiple small hay piles close together so he would wander between them with the tack on. I did slowly start tightening the girth, but I will say I use a highly elastic comfort girth and he never really seemed to have an issue with it. I know girthing can be a major issue with these horses. Since Sorrento told me that he was good with the tacking process and wearing tack, I paused on that for a while. I'm a strong believer that if you take a break from something, the horse doesn't necessarily forget it, and oftentimes they come back better after having a break. So I really wasn't worried about that. I wanted our first few rides to be bareback, mostly so that I could slide off quickly if he got bothered, and also so it felt like something he'd never done before. He was very good with me working over him and also leaning on him at this point, so I did teach him the pick-me-up trick where the horse moves over to you on a block, and I would lay over him enough to give him a treat on the other side. He loved that game, so after a day or two, I could hop on him and just sit there and feed him treats while he ate his hay. Still just wearing a halter and lead, the next step of the game was to add in the multiple hay piles he already knew how to wander to and from. I would have him pick me up at the block, go through the same few times laying over him, and then get on all the way, and just let him be completely relaxed and wander to the hay at his choosing. He did surprise me and had no issues walking off. I think a big part of that was that he already understood the game and wasn't worried about any of the elements since he understood them individually. After a bit, I started spacing out the hay piles and would just jump on him from the ground. He would stand like a rock to make sure that he got his treats. I felt like he was more ready for a real ride. I still wanted it to be bareback and in a halter, so my sister was able to ride my other horse and lead us around for a few minutes. Sorrento did great. We went a path that he had hand walked many times, so he was very familiar with the job. I did feel like if I could get him to understand that I wanted him to take me somewhere, that he wouldn't really think of bucking. So after our first pony type ride, we did a few rides with him following another horse on the trails to the farthest point, stopping for a snack for a good couple of minutes. He either got to eat grass or he got a big reward of treats, and then we would head home. He understood that really well, and after a few rides, he was leading. Sorrento's personality is a bold leader, but he did have to build the confidence for that to truly show. After that, we mostly did short rides around 10 to 15 minutes alone, still bareback and in halter, pausing for snacks as a reward of getting to the halfway point. I will say at this point I did have a halter with 2 rings on it, so I was able to attach reins. So it was not quite like I was riding just with a lead rope. I could tell with each short ride he was getting more and more sure of what he was supposed to do. I did add in tack after a month or so, starting with adding the bridle and letting him wear it while eating, and then hand walking, and then riding, and then same with the saddle. Hand walking first as he was already good with eating and wandering hay piles with it, and then getting on. I did the same process of mounting with the saddle as I did without, using treats, and he loved that. He had no issues walking off with the saddle or riding as he already knew the game and what he was supposed to do. We did a few months of easy, simple rides where he got to go out on the trails, and I really didn't ask for much and wasn't picky about things, so I went through some trees, maybe some paths that weren't the best, but he felt like he did a great job every ride. I was still hand walking him, tacked on the road some days, and I did do his first road ride with another horse around this point. He was fantastic and definitely knew his job. As far as trot and canter, I did practice his vocal cues lunging a few times, and then lunging with a saddle after he was already happily riding with a saddle. I think this helped him understand that he didn't need to buck, and he never did. I used the road for his first trot. There's a small path of sand and dirt on each edge of the road that I use as my road arena, right at the edge of the property so he could see the rest of the horses. I walked him down a way and then asked him to trot back, and he happily did it. I was definitely nervous, but it was not a big deal to him. He got lots of treats and praise, and we did it a few times. On one time, he offered canter, which I was shocked and maybe also a little bit terrified. But he didn't do anything silly, so I took it, and I rewarded him for it. He offered a few more times, and we ended there, checking off the first trot under saddle, as well as the first canter under saddle, even if it was unplanned. From then on, we've just been putting in shorter, like 20 to 30 minutes or so, rides alone, and then when we ride it with another horse, we may do up to 2 hours. He's done a few arena type of workouts. We really just did, I think, around 3 last year. He didn't have great steering. We ended up outside of our invisible lines many times. So I did end up going back and really teaching him about shoulder control and working on that steering. We've done one arena type of ride this year, which I have on YouTube, and I was super happy with his progress despite not practicing our arena work and really just working on that body control. He made great strides. I suppose I did start a little backwards with his training, but my goal was to make him think differently about riding and not link it with his previous job of bucking at all. I think his personality is what has made him a successful riding horse. He is very smart and wants to please, and he absolutely tries so hard to get things right. I would say he is now 95% tame and 99% sure of his new job after I've had him for just under a year and a half. Thank you guys so much for coming along on our little trail ride today. I was super happy with how Sorrento did. He was very brave, and he handled riding with less experienced horses like a pro. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!